You have reached the end. This is your last thing you have to do for the school year. The objective is to create a TI 83 plus program. And what that will be explained coming up next. You must create a Blackjack program. Blackjack is a card game, for those of you who do not know, and the objective is to do the following. When you're playing Blackjack, you are dealt 2 cards, and you can look at both of them. The other person, the dealer, is dealt 2 cards. You can see one of them, and in this case it's an ace. So by looking at their one card that's up, then you try to determine whether or not you should have another card dealt to you. You can see both of your cards. So you have a 10 and a 3. They have an ace, which counts as a 1 or an 11. So you have a 13. They could have a 4 under there. If this is a 4, then they could have a 15. If they have a 10 under there, it's Blackjack. If they have a face card, it's Blackjack, because 10 and 11 is 21. And if you hit 21, then you're going to win. So if you're the person playing this game and you have a 13, you have a choice of hit or stay. If you stay, then you have a 13, and then you wait for them to reveal their card. And if they don't have something to beat yours, they're going to keep drawing cards until they either beat you or they bust, which means they go over 21. Now, if you say hit me with another card and you get a 4, you now have 17. If they have a 6 under their card, then they could have 17 and tie you and have to hit again. Or you could draw another one, and if you draw another one, it's an 8. Of course, you've gone over 21, and you lose. And it now makes no difference what they had in their card underneath, because they're going to win. So there are varying things that you have to remember. One, your program must, of course, have the opening screen. And your opening screen consists of a welcome and your name. And then it's going to have instructions. You can give whatever instructions you deem necessary for the user to play. And then the major components of the game are going to be the following. You have the deal. The cards have to be dealt. And then there must be some accounting that goes on. There has to be an accounting of the dealer's hand, who gets 2 cards, and your hand. And you get 2 cards as well. Now, we're not going to play with just one deck of cards. We're going to assume that there is a very large stack of playing cards. So it's not just 52. It could be anything. Sometimes they play with 4 decks of cards, 5 decks of cards, so there could be anything. So for the purpose of randomly drawn cards, we will say that anything is possible. You also have to take into account your greater than, less than, or equal to things. You have the dealer's hand, and then you have your hand. Now the dealer is going to be dealt a hand, and it must have some kind of total. You're dealt a hand, and it's got to have some kind of total. And what organizes all of this and makes it run smoothly is that you have an option, hit or stay. And if you hit, then this total has got to go up. If you stay, it stays the same, and then the game shifts back to the dealer. That's just the beginning for today. We're going to go over little tidbits as we build up to the last day. But what you need to remember is this project is worth 3,000 points. And that's the same as 3 tests. Or you could call it 1 test and several homeworks. Or 2 tests and a moderate amount of homeworks. No 2 programs must look alike, and that is important. You cannot wait until somebody else gets a program that is semi-functional and then use a cord to copy that program from them, and then you change it just a little bit and to make it yours. No 2 programs can look alike. For example, if I get a bunch of programs in which the dealer's hand is up here and your hand is down here, then something's strange, because out of 27 people there should be some variation of where the cards show up, for example. Now for your cards, how the cards are going to be displayed on the screen, you want to come up with a way to actually draw a card on the screen. So instead of just having something that's blank and then maybe a K for a king that shows up, you actually have something that's a card with something in there. And if there's nothing in it, that means that card is face down. Now, of course, yours are going to be face up. The dealer is not going to be able to see them in theory because it's a computer. And it won't be rigged and programmed such that this can win every time. So think about how you're going to create a card on the screen and be able to demonstrate or display what it is that card is. For this project in this program, it'll be graded on the following things. Functionality. Does it work? That's always important. And then appearance. How does it look? Does it look really generic, or does it look like you've put a lot of thought into it? So you have function and appearance. Function is going to be 2,000, and then appearance is going to be 1,000. And we'll break down the both of them. For function being worth 2,000, function can break up like this. At the very bottom, you could have one that just simply does not work. If it doesn't work at all, then out of that 2,000 you would get a 0. For being able to at least display the welcome screen, the instructions, and dealing the cards, if you can make it up to the deal and have some cards on the screen, then you've made it to at least 300 out of the 2,000. Now if you can hit and stay to the point to where you've made it through one hand, then that'll be 500. You've made it to 500. If you can make it through more than one hand, if you go through multiple hands, then you can get to 1,000. And I'll have to put this up here at the top. For the 5th one, if you can make it through multiple hands and your winning has been accounted for, like how many games you've won and lost and things like that, win-loss, then you'll make it to 1,500. And ultimately, to make it to the entire 2,000 points for function, you have to go through a series of games, keep track of the number that you won and lost, and also keep track of the money that you won and you lost. Because you will also have the capability in here to bet a certain amount of money on each hand. So you bet it. If you lose, you lose. If you win, you get a certain amount, and you can choose that multiplier. So the 6th one will be calculating earnings. For your appearance for the program, that's going to be worth 1,000. And if it has that generic look with nothing special to it, then you've made it to 200. The second level, which will get you to 400, is that if you do have some kind of graphics in there, just a touch above generic. 600, it must have that wow effect. That'll get you to at least 600. And then all the way, skipping to 1,000, is that if you're using commands such as circle, draw, line, and items like that to be really detailed in your pictures, then that will get you up to 1,000. Here's a question about the screen. Here's your screen, and do you remember how many characters you could put from left to right? 16. It was 16 from left to right. And then up and down, how many could you put? 8. Yeah, that's right. But for when you're drawing lines and points and pixels like that, it's not 16 by 8. It is much different than that. For drawing on the TI-83 or 84, the screen size is 96 this way and 64 this way. So this is 96 pixels by 64 pixels. So if you're using a command from the draw where it's point on, point off, pixel on, pixel off, you can do certain things, and I'm going to make this a little larger than what it should be. For example, if you were drawing a card on the screen and you wanted to use pixels to outline the card, of course this is an extremely zoomed in version of that. So you could go like this and like that and make a card. There are some shortcuts you can make because, you know, that's a lot of pixels, and if you go clear across the screen, that's 96 different things. You don't want to have to type in 96 different items just to create one horizontal line or one vertical line. You have two different options to go about it. Notice that in the draw feature you have a line. You have a line option, which you can draw a line from pixel to pixel instead of having to do a line of code for each and every one of those dots. So if I wanted a line to go from, let's see, for the coordinates, let's say it were 3 over and 2 down, I'm going from there to 10 over and 2 down. That's a lot easier to draw a line like that than it is to actually put all the dots in by yourself. Don't forget, you can also do this. Do you remember what that does? What does the 4 do? It creates something starts with an L. A loop, yes. And for every 4 that you have to have what that finishes it off? End, yeah. So in between there, if you wanted to create some pixels and bump them over a certain way, you could have the pixel on command, pxl-on, and then include whatever variable you had in there. Maybe even more than one. On your welcome screen, try to make it a little more flashy than you did before. What should the welcome screen always contain? Yeah, you should always have your name and the date. Most importantly, the name of the project. So in this case, it's going to be Blackjack. Or you could choose to call it 21, whatever you want to do. But don't just type in Blackjack and 21. Try to make it more graphical than character-like. So don't just type in Blackjack 21. See if you can put some effort into making a welcome screen that is really neat. And this is a creation of your own. So at some point in there, you not only want your name, but you should also put in a copyright code for 2013. And try to be artistic with this stuff. I'm going to just create one right off the bat. Here's the first thing I think about when I'm making this for a welcome screen. If it were me, and I were trying to come up with an idea, I would try to find a way where I could make the number 21 really big, like that, and then maybe try to find a way to offset the actual words Blackjack, and then have created by myself a version number you might want to have in there. Version 1.0. And maybe a copyright in there somehow. But just because I write out the numbers and the letters doesn't mean that it can't be graphical. Instead of just having 21, you could also put something else around it. You could probably put a border around it. Or, since it's a card game, what could you draw on the screen? Cards, yeah. Here's another one right off the top of my head for a neat looking screen. You could have 21 really big and bold, and then try to draw cards like this. And try to have some slant to them, and actually put on the card what they are, maybe a queen, ace, king. And then you could put in your name, copyright, and all that other stuff in there. Make it a really neat graphical display. Here's a tip for when you're making your welcome screen. Let's say you're going to use characters, A, B, C, D, and all that stuff to make words. So if you output some items, and whatever it is, you have some output that's some characters. And then you go with a line command. And you make some kind of a line. But then you go back and do output. This is almost the same as putting an extra clear home in there when it comes to drawing. If you do this, it's now in the character mode where you're outputting on certain spots in the screen in terms of the character 16 across 8 down. If you switch to this, it will draw it, and you will see it if you put a pause after line. But once your program goes to this, to the next output, it now wipes out your drawings and shifts back to the 16 by 8 that you have in there. So you might want to try, and it's the really artistic way to go about it, you might want to stay with the 96 by 64 and try to create your letters and stuff in there using that.